Clemson's search for a new defensive coordinator continues. Meanwhile, the Clemson basketball team has bounced back from that loss at Louisville and earned a strong win against Florida State. They're going to Atlanta to face Georgia Tech on Tuesday. We'll talk about that. Let's dive right in. So last week there were some rumors from the Post and Courier who really tweeted it and kind of gave it legs that Clemson had moved on from Tim Banks and was targeting Al Golden, the defensive coordinator from Notre Dame, where he's done a really great job. I shared that, but also shared that seems pretty unlikely because pulling someone from Notre Dame, especially given they're in the national championship, that feels a little lofty. It feels lofty. I mean, Notre Dame's an incredible program that is operating at a really high level. To pull him to Clemson, it doesn't seem realistic. But also, especially when the NFL would probably love to have him. So that's one. And everything I'm hearing, this is now according to TCI, they're saying that if he's going somewhere, it's the NFL. He's not coming to Clemson. So that was probably untrue. Maybe Clemson wanted him, but I don't think he was ever a likely candidate. But there are still games going on. Notre Dame's obviously still alive, so we won't have anything definitive on that until at least after they win or lose that national championship against Ohio State. And then you got the Broncos and the Packers, which as of this recording are playing today. I'm recording it on Sunday of the wild card round. Broncos, Jim Leonard is the guy that I've said is the number one candidate on my board that I would love Clemson to add. He is the former defensive coordinator for Wisconsin. He's now a defensive backs coach with the Denver Broncos. Now, he did a great job as a DC in Wisconsin, and then he didn't get the job. He got passed over for Luke Fickell, who they hired from Cincinnati. And he left, and from my understanding, I don't know that he was forced out. I think he was upset he didn't get the head coaching job, so he leaves. He's like an analyst at Illinois, and then he goes to the Broncos. So would he take more money to get back into a DC role with a program that's better than Wisconsin and Clemson? I think that's pretty realistic. So, cheering for the Bills because I want Clemson to be able to reach out to him and hire him immediately. I think that would be a home run hire. Jim Hafley and the Packers, they're underdogs on Wild Card Sunday today. If they lose, maybe you can talk to Jeff Hafley, but that one is another one that I feel is pretty unrealistic. So hoping Jim Leonard comes to fruition, I still think that is quite possible. That would be a home run in my book. And then I want to credit TCI on this because this is a name I had not heard, but Scott Simmons, I don't know the pronunciation there, but from SMU, the DC there of that defense that pressured quarterbacks so well and was so good against the run, doing what he did at SMU in a new conference, increased the competition level. They didn't have a huge talent advantage. I love to see a coach who did more with less, and then he can come to Clemson and have more, right? Then you can just up that level, right? You go out and you hire someone like Tom Allen from Penn State, where they have incredible talent, or even like an Al Golden from Notre Dame, where they have great talent. They're safe, they're good hires, but to take a team like SMU and elevate them to college football playoff, I think that's even more impressive. You could argue that what SMU did for SMU is as impressive as getting to the Final Four with Penn State or the national championship with Notre Dame. Obviously, that changes. Notre Dame wins it. But anyway, those are some updates for Clemson's DC search. Now, outside of Clemson, you have Miami. They've officially made their hire of Corey Heatherman, the DC from Minnesota. An okay hire, not a hire that's going to knock anyone's socks off. He was the DC at Minnesota this year, and he was really good. He was a linebackers coach for 2 years at Rutgers. He was the DC for 3 years with James Madison, the DC for a while at Maine. I mean, it's not a overwhelming resume, not something like a Jim Leonard, which would be a real home run. So that takes Tim Banks off, Tim Banks from Tennessee kind of off the board, or officially off the board for Miami. It was reported that he is also off the board from Clemson, and all indications are he will be staying with Clemson. So Scott Hamilton in the Post and Courier, who reported him, and Al Golden, he seems like he missed on those two, although it is reported that Clemson did talk to Tim Banks, so perhaps not a miss, but it seems like Tim Banks is pretty close to officially on the verge of probably re-signing with Tennessee, most likely. So let me know your thoughts on this defensive coordinator search as it continues to play out. Let's dive into some Clemson basketball. Clemson had a great performance against Florida State. The defense was back, really locked them up. In the beginning, it was a kind of a defensive battle. I thought Florida State's interior defense was outstanding. And then Clemson just knocked down threes, and they had no answer. They couldn't defend the three, and Clemson couldn't miss, right? And I know a lot of Clemson fans get frustrated that Clemson will shoot too many threes. I've seen that in comments so many times. When Clemson has a bad shooting night, it's complaints that the coach let them shoot too many threes. But this is kind of like this is picture perfect or perfect example of it's not always going to work in the interior. If the defense is going to kind of focus on that, you beat them with a three. It's a little bit like football where you take what they give you. And they were giving Clemson threes, and Clemson was hot early. Clemson's defense carried them when the hot shooting slowed a little bit. Chase Hunter was outstanding, 8 for 14 for 25 points. He is Clemson's best player. He is an outstanding scorer from three. He could drive. He can get to the lane or get to the free throw line. He's become a star. And I think you could start saying, I think it was Jay Ingles, the Shaking the South End writer, who put this in my mind, but he's probably the best guard Clemson's ever had in the program. So think about that. Long career obviously helps him, but really, really having an outstanding season. Jaden Zachary was better. He knocked down a couple threes, had 15 points. And Wiggins, again, when he's good, he's great. And, I've been frustrated at times that he gets so many minutes, but his upside is so good. And we saw it in this one. He had 12 points on 5 for 7 shooting. Clemson is a really, really good team when he's on. And he's averaging almost 9 points, or we'll look at the stats in a second. He's right around there. Sometimes he's inconsistent, but when he's good, he's really, really valuable for this team. Victor Lockett had some foul trouble, but still got six rebounds. He's a major defensive presence. And Ian Shefflin kind of struggled, or not kind of, he struggled in this one. I saw that he had some sort of back spasms. I don't know all the details of that, but that may explain why he's not been quite so dominant lately. If I pull up his game log, last couple games, he's had 2, 10, 21, 4, and 13 points. And he's had 2, 10, 7, 4, and 7 on rebounds. So not like a huge slump or anything, but not where he was just the 4 games before that against better competition. When Clemson played Kentucky, Miami, Memphis, and South Carolina, he went for 11, 15, 17, and 23 in those games. And the rebounding totals were 20, 13, 6, and 12. So he was outstanding in those games. Clemson actually only went 2-2 in them. But then the last 5, he's cooled off a little. We'll see if he can get more involved on Tuesday against Georgia Tech. On the year, let's look at these overall stats. Chase is averaging over 17.5 points per game. His 3-point shooting is all the way up at nearly 45%. Big improvements for him there. I'm going to pull up real quick his stats last year on 3-point shooting. And this is where, again, 3-point shooting just changes a team, changes a player so much. So last year, Chase Hunter was really bad for 3, especially the first half of the year. He was 31.1%. And now he's obviously doing outstanding at 44.8. And that's largely the difference. Not only is that, more made threes, but now the defense has to respect that so much more. Just for context, Joseph Girard, who again did shoot a lot more threes, shot 41.3%. So I don't know that Hunter will be if he'll shoot above 41% on the season, if it will slow down a bit. I would assume he slows down at least some, but he's currently doing better than Girard did on 3-point percentage, which is incredible. Shefflin on the year still doing great, averaging nearly 13 and 10. He hasn't been bad lately, but just a little bit of a slowdown. Victor Lockett, he's been sick. And so you've seen him battle through it, and you really got to see just how critical he is for the defense, averaging 1.7 blocks a game. He's just so important for this team. He's been a real home run as a transfer coming in from Cincinnati. Just like Jaden Zachary's honestly also been a home run, averaging nearly 10 points. Struggled a little bit more than I expected, or is struggling more than I expected from 3. Last year, he was a great 3-point shooter, not at a huge volume, but last year he was 40.5% 3-point shooter on 79 3-point attempts. So not huge volume, but I do expect Zachary to tick up or continue ticking up as a 3-point shooter. And then Wiggins he's actually just over 9. He pushed it over 9 with his performance against Florida State. And then let me back up. Dylan Hunter, just looking at the bench, Dylan Hunter's the first guy off the bench, but Jake Heidbreder lately has earned a lot more minutes. And now he's kind of the number 2 guy off the bench, as well as Del Jones, who had 9 points against Florida State. Miles Foster and Christian Reeves are kind of the next guys. That's their sort of 10 main guys there. I like Miles Foster. I probably expected more usage and more performance from him, but I still think he's valuable. Reeves is just a lot of upside that's untapped. A little bit, not finishing around the rim, not quite ready. I think he could be pretty good though. Potentially next year seeing a big uptick in minutes, but right now, his amount of play is probably about right. You're playing him enough to get him experience and grow him as a player, but I don't know that you want him to have hardly any second half minutes because he does make a lot of turnovers and fouls in a pretty short amount of time. Let me see if I can pull that. His turnover percentage. Yeah, his turnover rate is the worst. It's the worst on the team by almost like double. Yeah, he really struggles with the turnovers. And then his fouls called at 4.7 per 40 minutes. Second worst on the team. Only one worse is Victor Lock-in at 5.1. So you really got to limit Christian Reeves' minutes, and that's what they're doing. I think Coach Brownell is doing a good job there. So looking at the ACC more broadly, you've got 6 teams in the ACC that are tournament worthy, or at least in legitimate contention. I have them on the left. Duke likely a lock. Pittsburgh looking like they're also a lock. Louisville and Clemson extremely likely tournament teams. And then UNC and SMU, especially UNC, they'll just on brand name alone, they'll almost get in. But SMU, I think, is also quite good. But then after that, you've got like this middle grouping here. Florida State going down to Georgia Tech that are not bad, but they're like they could sneak up on you, but they're not good teams. And these last 3, Virginia Tech, Miami, and Boston College, are just bad. And Virginia Tech may be the most surprising because Mike Young was the guy that a lot of Clemson fans thought Tigers should go get from Wofford when things weren't going so well for Coach Brownell in the program. Maybe go get Mike Young out of Wofford. He goes to Virginia Tech and immediately they do really well. But now that's kind of turned, and you wonder how long does Mike Young have there? His first year was the COVID year, I guess. So let's skip that one. But the 2021 season, they made the tournament as a 10 seed, made it again the next year as an 11 seed. And then it's kind of fizzled, right? So they haven't done anything since, and they're trending down pretty severely, actually. So, kudos to Graham Neff. Kudos to the Clemson administration for sticking with Brad Brownell. This is an example of what can happen when you make a bad coaching hire versus if you invest in your program, invest in facilities, invest in NIL to bring in guys like Joe Girard, to bring in guys like Jaden Zachary and empower your coach, right? Spend money on coaching, or you can spend money on facilities, on players. Clemson did it right. So let's look at where Clemson is now. They're 1-2 in quad 1 games with their big resume win being Kentucky. Kentucky's continuing to look better despite their loss to Georgia. They're 3-2 in quad 2 games, most recently picking up a win at home against Florida State. Obviously, these move as the year goes on. I think Florida State's probably not bad. Maybe that'll stick. So overall, that's 4-4, against the best competition, and then they're perfect 9-0 against weaker competition. And that's important. It was 2 years ago where they lost to a bad South Carolina and a bad Loyola of Chicago, and those got overweighted and over-exaggerated, and that's what they used as an excuse to keep Clemson out. So Clemson's 5-1 in the ACC. They're 13-4. No bad losses at all. One really great win and 3-2 in sort of those more just battles, quad 2 battles that you want to win but aren't kind of reaches. I think of quad 1 wins is you don't expect to be above 500 in quad 1. You like to be above 500 in quad 2. You like to be near perfect in quad 3 and 4. And that's basically what Clemson's doing. Most recently, they added that quad 2 win against Florida State. Before that, they picked up 2 quad 3 wins against Stanford and Cal. So things are looking good there. And as the ACC battle shakes out, I think there's 3 teams that are have a good shot to win the ACC. I mean, Duke is obviously the favorite at 6-0 with all their talent. But beyond that, I think Clemson and Louisville also have a shot at 5-1 in the ACC. I think it's a 3-team race with probably North Carolina and Pitt with all due respect to Wake Forest, I think North Carolina and Pitt are the other teams that could sneak up and win it. But this is Clemson has a real shot here. I mean, you look at their upcoming schedule: Pittsburgh, Duke, Florida State, and SMU are quad one games, and those are going to be tough. But there's every other game Clemson will either be favored or have a great shot to win, and Clemson's not going to go 0-4 against those teams. At least I certainly don't think they will. So Clemson could post one of their best ACC records in a very, very long time. A lot of it's just going to be how excellent is Duke. I mean, is Duke going to drop like 2-3 ACC games? Usually that doesn't happen. Teams can't really do that. It's just too much of a grind to go on the road. But hey, the ACC is down. And if Duke is near perfect, then Clemson's not going to win it. But if Duke can drop a couple they shouldn't, or drop some road games, and if Clemson can beat them, and they do get them at home, not only can Clemson get a top 4 seed, but they could win their second ever regular season ACC title. So this is definitely one to watch. Louisville's win over Clemson is a big one because it very much puts Louisville in the race as much as Clemson, or even more so. But those 3 teams are in great spots in the conference and then the NCAA tournament hunt. So up next on Tuesday, I mentioned Clemson goes to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's the team that I was the most wrong about heading into this year in all of college basketball. I was a big believer in them. Last year, they were really young. Nathan George was a freshman they brought in from Toronto, Canada. And as a true freshman, his shooting could have been better. This is this year's stats, but last year, even his three-point shooting wasn't that great, although he did terrorize Clemson. But as a true freshman, you think he's got a lot of growth. And they bring in Baydongo from Senegal. And as a true freshman, he was a bit raw, but they gave him minutes, and he performed. He was a double-digit scorer. He was a rebounder. He was a defensive presence. And neither of those guys have improved. And I don't know if they've regressed per se, although Nathan George's three-point shooting is really abysmal, worse than it was before. But they haven't shown the growth that I expected, and that's a big problem. Those two guys, you kind of think they need to be the stars on the team with 15 and 15 from each of them, with George shooting at a much higher clip, Dongo just scoring and rebounding more. I thought that was likely under second-year coach Damon Stoudemire, former NBA star Mighty Mouse. Well, it hasn't happened. Instead, Lance Terry, who's a senior, he actually transferred in from Gardner-Webb, but this is his second year with Georgia Tech as a fifth-year player. But he's actually their leading scorer. He stepped up, added about 5 points to his scoring average. He's going to be the guy to watch on Tuesday. He's a pretty dangerous three-point shooter at nearly 40%. He's shot 102 three-pointers, more than anyone on the team by a pretty wide margin. So to still be shooting it at 39.2%, he is definitely the guy to watch. They cannot leave him open. He's got to be, assignment number one. We'll see if Jaden Zachary could really shut him down, or if you put Chase Hunter on him. Either way, Clemson's got good options to slow him down, but that's got to be kind of mission one. And then Javian McCollum, who's come in from Oklahoma, has also been good for them. A really strong ad. Let's see his numbers here. Yeah, he's only shot 59 three-pointers, so not quite the volume, but at 40.7%. His offensive rating is the highest on the team at 118, which is to say he's very efficient. But beyond those guys, they're not a great three-point shooting team overall at 34.2%, which is 130th. They're really, really poor defending the three, allowing 35% three-point shooting from opponents, which is 254th. So if Clemson's going to get looks, if they're even just average, not necessarily hot, but just not cold from three, I don't think Georgia Tech, even being in Atlanta, I don't think Georgia Tech can beat them. If Clemson gets cold from three and has to beat them inside, that's where this gets a little bit more interesting. Shefflin's been a little cold. Larkin's been sick. Then he had foul trouble. So Georgia Tech's defense is decent, aside from the three-point defense. Obviously three-point shooting comes and goes, but Clemson's been a pretty good three-point shooting team. So I think that's a game where it's on the road, so nothing will surprise me, but Clemson should win handily. They're predicted to win by 7, and they're given a 73% chance to win according to Ken Palm. So definitely a game that Clemson ought to win. And that would be big because right after that, Clemson goes to Pittsburgh, where that's next weekend on Saturday. They will be underdogs. It's be a really tough quad one game. So would do them a lot of good to take care of business at Georgia Tech. And you look at Georgia Tech's resume, they are 0-7 in quad one and quad two games. And they've only beat one quad three team even, which was a home win against Notre Dame. So they really haven't beaten anyone beyond that. This is really a game that Clemson should go in, play well, pick up an ACC road win. We'll see if they do it. Don't forget, this channel is sponsored by Ready Vets. If you're in the upstate area, they're in Taylor's. Pay them a visit when you can't get a veterinary appointment and your dog or cat cannot wait. Also, please don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like this video. I really appreciate it. And be sure, Clemson basketball coverage is harder to get people engaged in. So I'd really appreciate it. Leave some comments. Let me know what you think. I'd love to keep doing more basketball content. As always, go Tigers.